Hello everyone, this is SteamedIguana, and welcome back to Monsterverse Madness. We're getting close to the end of the road, and it's time to cover the movie that brought back multiple Toho kaiju and gave the Monsterverse more lore than you could check a vinyl at. The director Michael Dougherty definitely gave us a wild, kaiju-filled ride. But interestingly, in the 2 years since this movie hit theaters, just like G14, my thoughts have kinda gone back and forth on it quite a bit. So, let's dig into that more today, as we review Godzilla, King of the Monsters. I remember the summer of 2018, going to G-Fest with my friends and all of us being so hyped for Godzilla, King of the Monsters. Everyone knew at that point that we were getting some Toho legends in this movie, and man, that was just such an action-packed time to be a G fan. You better believe that once that trailer dropped, we were all raving about it. Claire de Lune still sits on my playlist to this day, and it did a great job teasing, but not outright spoiling all that we would get in this movie. 10 out of 10 trailer, would watch and be hyped as hell again. But quite frankly, all that time kind of blended together. There was so much going on that in the time leading up to the movie, my memory is a little blurry. Although now, especially since I've patched up the Cyberworld's firewall after some recent incidents, I actually brought in a special guest to help with this review. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, please welcome Hadley!
How you doing, ladies and gentlemen? My name is Hadley and I run a Godzilla series of my own called Into the Zillaverse, which details Godzilla's history throughout film and media. And I'm delighted to be invited on by my good friend Barbecued Lizards to review Godzilla, King of the Monsters.
Glad to have you, man. God, leading up to this movie was a hell of a time. But what about when I finally settled into the IMAX 3D seat once again for some kaiju action? What did I think? Well, let's get right into it. For starters, I think we gotta talk about the Toho kaiju. That's easily one of the biggest selling points of this movie, especially for those who were into Godzilla before the movie came out. It's very interesting to see how the team decided to translate all those kaiju icons for a Hollywood blockbuster, starting off with the Big G himself. Just like with 2014, I feel like his design here is just fantastic. A few minor changes here and there, including those spines. A nice subtle callback to older Godzilla designs that isn't super in your face, at least in my opinion. I love that they kept the bulky and almost bear-like physique because that still just gave him such a presence on screen. And the fact he's glowing as an intimidation display is a little cheesy, but I just ate that shit up. I loved it. I want more of that in my kaiju movies. Just overall a very rugged and buff, but still sleek and aquatic feeling Godzilla. Definitely one of my favorite Godzilla designs. What about you?
I 100% agree, man, especially with the designs. Like, my only complaint, and it is a nitpick, it is 100% a nitpick, but it's a nitpick that I had with the 2014 design as well. I think the head is a bit too small. It just looks kind of silly for me. I know they did it to try and make it look like a real creature, and to be honest, that's probably one of the design's strong points, is this, out of all of the Godzilla designs, is probably the most plausible design that could actually exist in the real world. But I think if you maybe just took the head and just blew it up a little bit, then yeah, after that, it would 10 out of 10 be one of my favorite Godzilla designs that they've ever done. And this portrayal of Godzilla is carrying on from the previous movies, where this one is more of a protector of humanity as opposed to some nuclear deterrent, which Godzilla's been many different things. There is no arguably wrong version of Godzilla, mostly. And honestly, I quite like, it's a very Western approach for Godzilla that they take, is all I'm saying. You know, the Japanese have this big nuclear lizard as a symbol of, you know, very, very bad things. Meanwhile, the Americans have this nuclear lizard as a symbol of good things to come. It's almost like something happened in the past that would give Japan and America extremely opposing views on nuclear energy.
Next up, Rodan, the Fire Demon. Really living up to his name, huh? While Rodan has always been fairly close to the standard image of a pteranodon, I'm still shocked at how much they've managed to make each incarnation feel unique, this one included. The fact that his wings are literally fiery is a nice touch, and that entire sequence with him is just fantastic and one of my favorite set pieces in the movie. Gotta see if a little mini Argo exists so I can recreate that scene. I just really wish we had seen more of him, Very neat design, but severely underutilized.
Yeah, no, see, I'm totally with you. I initially saw the leaks for Rodan earlier. I tried not to look at it, but I did end up looking at it. And initially, I hated it. I hated the look of like the feathers. I didn't want to see Rodan with feathers whatsoever. And I was hoping that was fake. It turns out it wasn't fake, it was real. But now that we see them in the design, this is probably my favorite look that Rodan has ever had. And honestly, I completely agree that they severely underutilized him in the movie. Like, he has two major fight scenes, and they cut off immediately after he starts to fight Ghidorah, and all the good stuff with Mothra is like swapping between the annoying humans, and yeah, they really did him dirty there. I know some people don't like Rodan in this movie because he kind of took a more Weasley approach, but I didn't read it like that from the start. Like, Michael Dougherty said that Rodan was his favorite kaiju to put in the movie, and I can see what he was trying to do with it. Like, he was trying to have Rodan as like a I am my true king kind of role in it, is that he will serve whoever believes can get him the best deal. Rodan is essentially the Hound as a kaiju.
As far as things go with the Queen of the Monsters... No, the other one. There we go. I feel King of the Monsters really captures the essence of beauty and gracefulness that Mothra is known for. The bioluminescence just really makes her pop and really come to life on screen. And I'm super stoked they kept true with the design of her head in those close-up shots. Why can't any of the figures seem to get that right? Overall, her design is a much bigger change compared to some of the other returning kaiju, seeing as she went from bulky puppet to looking much more like an actual insect. The larva form too, while a departure, is a very unique take on it. It still comes off very well and still reads as Mothra larva. I don't think it's my favorite Mothra design, but it's definitely up there for the direction they took with it. But again, I feel was a little underutilized in the final product. To be honest, I just want more Mothra. Give me a full-fledged Mothra movie, please.
Honestly, man, like, Mothra best girl, and Mothra is one of the best things about this movie. Like, a very recurring thing that this film has done, and I know you disagree about this with the next one that we're going to talk about, but I feel this film really does well at capturing the characters of the kaiju, and Mothra does that the best. Like, all of the other kaiju in this movie, I feel they are versions of a character. You know, this is a version of Rodan, this is a version of Ghidorah, but this Mothra, this is Mothra. Doesn't matter that she looks visually the most different, by far, 100%, she is Mothra's character. That obviously then just makes me want to talk about the music that's included in this, which, you know, already we're being massively spoiled by having Arifie Kube's original Godzilla match, but to hear the bloody Mothra theme in this movie, oh my god, okay, already I was freaking out in the cinema over so much of this, but somehow I responded more off the wall to hearing Mothra's music than I did the Godzilla march. And keep in mind, like, the Godzilla march is one of my favorite pieces of music of all time, but that was the music that I was hoping to hear. It had never crossed my mind whatsoever that I would ever be able to hear Mothra's theme in a big budget Western movie.
Now time for an old favorite of mine, Ghidorah. I feel like I'm gonna get a lot of flack for this, but while I do like the design, it just doesn't quite do it for me. It doesn't feel like Ghidorah. I can't quite put my finger on why. Maybe it's the wings, or that he just looks a little too much like your standard Hollywood dragon like Smaug, rather than staying more true to his Toho design. After all, I'm all about that mane on my Ghidorahs. All I can really say is maybe they pushed him a little too realistic and changed him up a little bit too much. I'm very happy he's in the movie. He just didn't have that same threatening presence I felt when I watched movies featuring him as a kid. What about you, Hadley? Do you feel the same as me on this one?
See, I think I kind of agree with you, but while disagreeing with you, like, I love this version of Ghidorah. I absolutely love this version of Ghidorah for all the reasons that you don't like it. Like, all of the changes have been massive improvements in my mind. This Ghidorah is a very animalistic, and not just that he's not just a villain, he's outright cruel in this. Like, at the start in Antarctica, he's just eating people left, right and center. He's getting no nutritional value from any of that. He's just doing it to be a dick. And that's what this Ghidorah is. He's just a massive arsehole. If Godzilla is the T-Rex, then Ghidorah is the Indominus Rex. He is just here to cause problems, and I love it.
As for the story this time around, it's alright. It lies somewhere between Godzilla 2014 and Kong Skull Island for me. It starts off with Emma Russell, played by Vera Farmiga, and Madison Russell, played by Millie Bobby Brown, 5 years after Godzilla and the existence of kaiju was revealed to the world. Within the first few minutes, we already see more of Monarch than we ever had in any of the other Monsterverse films, and it's really cool. And no sooner do we see our first Toho kaiju with Mothra larva hatching from her egg. She begins to go wild, and this is when we see the MacGuffin of the movie, the Orca. A device that can talk to kaiju, and or titans, whatever you want to call them, by mimicking another alpha kaiju's frequency. It all goes south very quickly though, when eco-terrorist Alan Jonah kills all of the Monarch scientists besides Emma and Madison, kidnapping them. This is when we get some returning characters from G14 in the mix, with Dr. Serizawa and Dr. Graham, who go to find Mark Russell, played by Kyle Chandler and co-creator of the Orca. They let him know that his ex-wife and daughter have been kidnapped. That's right, this is a Godzilla movie about family. We also get to see in this part that Monarch is apparently under fire, seeing that now the Titans have made themselves known, they're obviously a massive safety risk for the entire world. But in Monarch's eyes, we have to coexist with the Titans. It's an idea that's explored more throughout the movie, but maybe not as well as it could have. We waste no time getting back into the action though, as they discover that Alan Jonah is taking Emma and Madison to Outpost 32 in Antarctica. Damn, that's like multiple references just in one name. Which holds everybody's favorite three-headed dragon, King Ghidorah. The Monarch team go to save them, and this is where on my first watch through of the movie, I got incredibly angry.
Run.
Why would you do that? I thought you were kidnapped. Why would you just willingly release the giant death dragon? Ugh. Even when this is explained later and revealed that Emma Russell's actually the villain, it kind of left a bad taste in my mouth for the rest of the movie. I just feel overall that she's poorly written as the villain, and I would have much rather seen Charles Dance perform as the main villain. I know that man can act, and I think he would have made for a much better villain overall. Without getting too in-depth with the rest of the story, because man, this movie is chunky. The rest of the movie basically plays out as a post-apocalyptic scenario, with Ghidorah and Godzilla, two alpha kaiju, battling for dominance as the rest of the world's titans wake up. And the characters rush trying to figure out how to help Godzilla in destroying Ghidorah before he kills them all and takes dominance over all of the world's titans. But I think I'll let Hadley take it from here, since I know he has a lot to say about Emma Russell and this movie as a whole.
You summed it up there, man. Emma Russell just... See, so let me run you down what it was like for me watching this movie. So I'm there in the cinema, I'm hyped as hell, you know, Godzilla's theme is blasting, Charles Dance shows up, I'm loving it. And then the unthinkable happens for a kaiju fan. I get around the halfway point of it, and it's, shit. I'm not enjoying this. And that was genuinely a heartbreaking thing to be halfway through this movie that I have been hyping up, that I've hyped up for myself so much, to then realise that I'm not enjoying it. Thankfully, immediately after that, Rodan then happened, and by the way, that Rodan scene of him rising up out of the volcano is possibly my favourite scene in the movie for just how ridiculously intense it is. But luckily, everything after that helps. It definitely helps. It doesn't fix the problems earlier on in the movie, but it definitely helps. I won't go into why we don't like Emma Russell, because I think we've done a perfectly good job at that, but my God, seriously. The thing is, you could have given that exact script to Charles Dance's character, and it would have been significantly better. Like, why is it that you had to have, like, the main woman role in the film be such an insufferable character? But otherwise, coming out of it, the movie is extremely enjoyable. It might not necessarily be a good critical movie, but it's extremely enjoyable, just big, dumb fun. And that's kind of why I have mixed feelings on it, okay? Because here's the thing, the initial Godzilla movie in 2014 was extremely gritty and realistic, and I love that. Like, if there ever was to be a kaiju attack, it would play out like it played in this movie. It's extremely realistic, it's extremely down to earth. Bryan Cranston's character is amazing, and you really feel what he's going through. And even after they ditch him in the movie and focus on the much more boring Aaron Taylor Johnson, I still feel invested in the story that's going on because it's hardcore realism. And then Kong Skull Island came out, and that was more of a Vietnam War movie. And then this one came out, and this one was very Marvel inspired. And that arguably works very well for the Monsterverse's favour, because no matter what your tastes are, there's gonna be a Monsterverse movie there for you. Each film is a completely different genre. However, the genre that I personally prefer is the 2014 one, the more dark and gritty, realistic approach to it. But I know more people dig the Marvel thing, but to be honest, as someone who's genuinely growing very, very tired of Marvel humour, you know exactly what I mean when I say Marvel humour. I mean, this is a very serious, hardcore, intense scene that is then immediately ruined by some god-awful joke by someone who is not funny. That was successful in Iron Man, and so Marvel have repeated it in every single movie they've done since, and now it's linking into other movies as well. For me, that actually ruined this movie far more than Emma Russell's character did, because I couldn't take it seriously. I wasn't invested in what was going on. Here's the thing, I understand that kaijus to this extent can be a very difficult thing for a modern audience to get their head around. And so, in the way that Marvel handled that with Guardians of the Galaxy, they don't take it seriously, they make it a laugh and a joke. But at the same time, is a three-headed space dragon really too difficult for the modern day audience to accept without gonorrhea jokes attached to it? Is it really too far to think that someone could take this kind of story seriously?
I'm totally with you on a lot of that, man. This movie, while it does have its issues, and for a long while, just like G14, I had very mixed feelings on it, I gotta admit, it's grown on me the last few times I've watched it. I feel like the directors are just having fun bringing these giant monsters to life. While I don't mind some of the stuff like the Marvel humor, I'd say that my biggest issues with the movie do stem from Emma Russell as a character. Once I got over that mountain though, most of the other characters like Madison, Mark, and of course Dr. Serizawa, I actually really enjoy. They might not have been super fleshed out, but they definitely have an arc to them, especially characters like Serizawa who carried over from the last movie. The characters who weren't annoying, I was genuinely invested in on screen. Maybe not as good as Kong Skull Island, but definitely still enjoyable. And believe me and a bunch of other G fans know what's going on with Chang and her twin sister. Give us a Mothra movie! And now, I know this isn't exactly a hot take, but I do love me some just off-the-walls, ridiculous sci-fi ideas, just like the classic Showa movies. And this kind of plays out like an older Showa movie. Only in a movie like this can you have some device that calls out to giant monsters and a giant flying warship that fights Rodan. Which I absolutely agree, that whole sequence is fucking amazing. Probably one of my favorite parts as well, and that track, slaps! Those crazy sci-fi ideas are the kind of stuff that I eat up, and this movie is chock full of it. And speaking of, I'm surprised I haven't mentioned it yet, but another example of this is Godzilla turning into Burning Godzilla at the very end. I absolutely did not expect that when I saw it in theaters. I actually really liked the way it was executed too, with him not only being juiced up with extra nuclear energy, but also needing Mothra's sacrifice to really push him over the limit. It's not only a cool-ass power-up to destroy Ghidorah with, but also a nice callback to Godzilla vs. Destoroyah, and arguably Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2, that I think was nicely done. Which, of course, has to be followed up to the sequel of 2014's Kiss of Death, The Deep Throat of Death. Again, I am all here for these batshit crazy moments that you can really only find in movies like this, and Burning Godzilla is a prime example. Plus, as we were saying earlier with the monsters, especially one like Mothra, they're just fantastic. Even the ones that barely showed up on screen like Scylla and Behemoth have become fan favorites with only a few seconds of screen time. And of course, special props gotta go to the people who brought them to life through mocap, like TJ Storm as Godzilla and Jason Lyles as Ghidorah. The score here is phenomenal as well, and you just know I was smiling ear to ear in the theaters hearing Bear McCreary's remixes of both the Mothra and Godzilla theme. Those tracks are just timeless and never get old. And of course, McCreary's entire soundtrack here is just immaculate. Not only did he make some stellar remixes of those old Ifukube themes, but the entire soundtrack is just such a masterpiece. Oh, love it. And like I said, that Rodan theme is, every time. Now, one thing I know is a little contentious about this movie is the Oxygen Destroyer and Serizawa's sacrifice. Yes, if you hadn't turned around yet because we were definitely discussing spoilers, Dr. Serizawa does die in this movie. And his assistant Graham, which I honestly think they could and should have done a lot more with, but overall didn't detract too much from my overall experience. Still wish they could have done more with that though. After Godzilla and Ghidorah meet up in Isla de Mara where Rodan is, the military very abruptly announces they have a new weapon, the Oxygen Destroyer, and launches it at both of the kaiju. Turns out though, since Ghidorah is from space and he didn't need that oxygen as much as Godzilla, he survives while Godzilla's vitals rapidly decline. Later on in the movie, with some help from Mothra, they discover that Godzilla is still alive, deep underneath the earth, absorbing radiation so he can heal. They wind up going down there, finding an ancient ruined civilization that seemed to worship the Titans, especially Godzilla, but can't go too far in since it's so highly radioactive down in Godzilla's lair. In a very serious, emotional moment, Serizawa decides he'll sacrifice himself, bringing a nuclear bomb right up next to Godzilla and detonating it to power him up so that Godzilla can return and kill Ghidorah for good. The issue with both of these things, I think for a lot of people, is that the tone of the original movie, which included both a character named Serizawa and the Oxygen Destroyer, was sort of lost here. The Oxygen Destroyer was not only the thing to kill Godzilla in his first ever outing, but was another allegory for an incredibly deadly weapon that, in the wrong hands, could make the entire world crumble. Not to mention that the original movie was very anti-nuclear bomb, with that kind of being the message of the entire movie and seriously defining this entire franchise. Whereas not only do things such as Emma Russell's tone-deaf speech about Titan radiation restoring the environment and scenes like this, it almost takes a pro-nuke standpoint. And I get it, this is a very Western view of nuclear energy, but that point still stands. While both of these things don't bother me too much personally, if I'm being honest, I can definitely see why people take issue with it. For me, I can see both sides of the coin, and you can't ignore the fact that over the years when Godzilla's the good guy, he still feeds on nuclear energy. And in that case, you kinda have to start treating the whole topic a little differently. I won't get into the semantics and morality of nuclear energy here. I just think that as time went on after the original movie, whenever Godzilla was the good guy, you always had this issue, and this has just been where it's the most blatant. And the Oxygen Destroyer, well, I do wish it was built up a little more rather than just being an almost blink and you'll miss it fan service moment. It served a purpose in the greater plot, and can still totally be brought back for later movies in the Monsterverse. Continue the Monsterverse. But back to you, man. What are your final thoughts on this?
So, coming off of that sounds initially like I have quite a negative opinion of this movie, but honestly, no. I love this movie. I love this movie, and more so over, I am so thankful for this movie. All of the complaints that I've said, all the complaints that I imagine we both said, are completely irrelevant when you think of the impact that this movie had. I grew up and I was always known as the dinosaur kid. I was always the Godzilla kid. Okay, I saw Godzilla, the TriStar version, like most Western kids did, as a kid, and I loved it. That was all of my initial exposure to Godzilla. After that, my mum was able to find me Godzilla Saves the Earth on PlayStation 2 in a second-hand store. I got that, and suddenly there's all these extra monsters, because you know, at this point they're monsters, they're not kaiju for a kid. At this point there's all these extra monsters that I've never heard of. And then, from the same store, she was able to get Return of Godzilla. Then, somewhere down the line, my mum's new boyfriend was able to rip me a copy of Godzilla vs. Destroyer onto DVD. And so, as I'm getting older and I'm slowly figuring out more of this puzzle and uncovering more and more of this realm of Godzilla, I'm growing up learning all of this. And so, all of these characters, I hold extremely close to me. And I was the weird kid for that when I was young. I was the weird kid, but I kept with it, and now suddenly, it's finally worth it. It's finally worth it. I can go to Asda and I can see a Ghidorah action figure. Do you have any idea the amount of validation that suddenly gives me after so many years of being interested in this stuff that no one cared about but me? I can have a conversation with my friends who have never seen a Toho movie about Ghidorah, Mothra, and Rodan, and they will actually know what I'm talking about. It's for that exact same reason that I'm a massive Jurassic World apologist, because I believe that movie did for Jurassic Park very much the same thing that this movie has done for Godzilla. So there you have it. The movie has a lot of flaws and there's a lot of things that I would have done differently, but from an outside perspective, the care and attention that these characters were given, everything from the badass redesigns to the amazing music to everything. It was not only a love letter for all of the fans, but for me, it was one of the most important movies that I have ever seen in my entire life.
Hell yeah, dude. Despite a lot of the stuff that might bog down this movie for some, I love this movie for what it does with Godzilla and all of the other Toho icons. Like you said, I can actually talk to people about all this stuff I was called weird for as a kid, even so far as when I started up a Godzilla club in my high school. Overall, it's a fun movie, and while it does have its issues, it's one I can enjoy a whole lot now at the end of the day. Thank you so much for joining me, Hadley. Glad we could get a perspective in here that wasn't someone who packed in or somehow got lost in the cyber world or, yeah. Hopefully that doesn't happen again.
Awesome, thanks very much for having me, bud. If you guys would be interested in seeing me talk more about Godzilla, I actually have a series called Into the Zillaverse, which runs down in different segments, all the different Godzilla movies that have come out, their history behind them, how they all do and do not interweave, and everything else. Chucks to subscribe if you'd be interested in seeing that kind of thing. Thank you to SteamedIguanas for having me on here. Thank you for all of you for listening to me. And most of all, thank you, Michael Dougherty, for this movie.
At the end of the day, I think Titan Goji put it best. Godzilla King of the Monsters stands to be one of the most polarizing movies in the entire Godzilla franchise, whether you either love it or you hate it. And that makes it a very difficult movie to review just because there's so much to it. But quite frankly, I actually think I stand in the middle here. I definitely say I'm leaning more into love as time goes on now, but this movie, even with its issues, is such a product of love, and honestly, I don't think I ever thought I'd see something like this come to light. If you would have told me when I was a wee little lad that we'd have an American Godzilla movie with Mothra, Rodan, and Ghidorah in it, I probably would have shat my pants just as I did when I was a teenager and heard that news. It's a fun movie with a serviceable plot, some really, really annoying characters here and there. But overall, just a movie I'm glad all of us G fans were able to experience, because this is a really special movie, regardless of if you like it or not. And hey, if you enjoyed this review of Godzilla King of the Monsters, be sure to leave a like and comment down below. Let me know your thoughts on this movie, since I know there's a whole spectrum of opinions from just about every G fan on this one. I'm really not sure that how polarizing this was for G fans will ever be topped. Oh shit, the big one is coming. Perhaps I spoke too soon. I know GVK is definitely making the rounds right now. So if you want to hear my thoughts on Godzilla vs. Kong and the next and final installment of Monsterverse Madness, be sure to subscribe and hit that bell button down below. You won't want to miss out on Lizard vs. Monkey, trust me. And until next time, G-fans, sayonara.
Surprise, motherfucker!
Oh, fuck!
What the fuck is this? What the? Are you fucking kidding me? What is this? Why did you do this?